Hey y'all, this is your girl Megan from the HoodAstroQ, and today I will be doing my continuation for Generation Pluto, the series, okay? And as you can see, right in the title, we are going to be discussing Pluto and Sagittarius. Now, this is for all of my Generation Zers out there because the last time Pluto was in Sagittarius was through 1995 to 2008. So actually a lot of my viewership, a lot of my subscribers and Patreon family members, you guys, a sizable amount of you guys anyway, fit this particular demographic, all right? Now, the next time Pluto enters Sagittarius will be December 18th, 2241. Needless to say, we all will be dead as hell. I mean, I don't even know if the planet will still be like inhabitable at that point, considering the global warming and all of the issues and existential threats to humanity that we have going on. Nonetheless, okay, when Pluto enters Sagittarius, it brings about a sense of empowerment through spirituality. So this particular time period was a rebirth of the way that people looked at religion, spirituality, philosophical beliefs, and their ideals. Now, this is why Generation Zers, I notice, are more apt to embrace occultism so strongly. These are people who have a natural aversion to religion in this very fundamental traditionalist kind of sense, because Sagittarius, on one hand, is the sign of freedom, expansion, and higher knowledge, while on the other hand, Pluto deals with transformation, but also taboo subject matters, which can be translated into literally the occult. So when you combine these two forces together, there is a lot of empowerment that can be gained through practicing a lot of alternative methods of spirituality or embracing things that may not be necessarily traditional or mainstream in terms of spirituality and religion. I noticed that a lot of these individuals could have even been raised in staunchly religious environments to the point where it was oppressive. Because once again, with Sagittarius dealing with freedom, this Pluto Sag generation does not take kindly to restrictions, limitations, or restraint of any kind. Okay, so even in the spiritual realm, these are people who are looking to flex that muscle and push the limits of what is deemed acceptable, quote unquote. And a lot of this did start with the Pluto Scorpio generation in terms of regenerating what is considered or deemed to be the norm, right? You could look at that Pluto Scorpio generation as having kicked the door in, but Pluto Sagittarius individuals are rushing in full force, all right, and really making some serious advancements in the world. So during this time period, it brings about an extreme and radical shift in ideals, constant quest and search for meaning, exploration on all fronts. This could be land, technology, sea, and space. So even when you take a look at when Pluto was last in Sagittarius during that 1995 through 2008 timeframe, there were a lot of new inventions made, especially in terms of the technology era. You got to think about, this is Y2K era. I don't know if you guys remember that back in 1999, where there was this fear of the year 2000 because a lot of people were unsure about the technology and technological capacity that our society had in place. So they feared that, certain things would short circuit and the world would come to an end, and, all of our technology would glitch and planes would fall out of the sky and so on and so forth. But there were so many different advancements made during this time. Social media, as we know it, was brought about. Even the internet, it went from being a very okay, we're going to use the dial-up thing because that's what back in the day, that's what we used to do. Okay. We used to have one computer, family computer, AOL dial-up. You could not be on the phone, and if you tried to pick up the phone when somebody was using the computer, you got the But we went from that kind of thing, right, to having the World Wide Web being adding so many different functionalities to it. It became extremely sophisticated during the Pluto Sagittarius generation. It's all about, once again, exploration, and it made it very easy for people to have information at their fingertips. So even when it came to, because you can even look at that Sagittarius energy as college, right? Students. So even as it pertains to school, this advancement made it a lot easier for students to get their hands on information and to do a lot more and access a lot more than they would have in prior generations before. So, there was this kind of catapult sense of advancement and progress being made. Also, easy access to a lot of this information resulted in the increase of conspiracy theories. Everybody became their own personal philosophers. Even thinking back to 9/11, you can have your own view as to what you feel like happened on that day the Twin Towers fell, but people were able to, like I said, utilize the internet, seek their own knowledge, and formulate their own opinions, ideals, beliefs, and so on and so forth. Now, also, Pluto and Sagittarius brought on a die-hard sense of optimism. And so as a result, taking it back to a humanistic type of level, an individualistic level, a lot of your Generation Zers and people who were born during this time period, right, with their natal Pluto and Sagittarius, these are your freedom fighters. Think back to the riots that were just taking place last month. They were filled with Generation Z individuals because they often have this kind of this idealistic notion of what they feel the world should look like. Now, on one hand, you can see where elders and other people can view this to be naive and just kind of pie in the sky and very short-sighted. However, Sagittarius is known for its blind optimism, and it can lead to some serious, once again, advancements being made, right? And it can give one the courage to hop out on faith, right? And do what is right, to cling to their ideals and belief systems and fight hard for them. And once again, there is this element of there being a distaste for being limited or even having perceived limitations placed on what they can do. Okay, you guys say that we can't fight for change or that we can't do A, B, C, and D. Well, let us show you exactly what we can do. And there is a very admirable type of quality to that. However, on the other side, if backfired, this energy can lead to irresponsibility, wastefulness, carelessness, and things just kind of blowing up in your face. And these are going to be essential things for that Pluto Sagittarius generation to understand. That unwavering sense of optimism can often render a person blind. Also, these are people who are greatly moved by symbolism, which I'm not too much of a fan of. So, for instance, even with this most recent situation that we are currently going through in terms of reshaping or rescaping the landscape of racist America as we know it, right? And you have a lot of people toppling these historic figures, a lot of whom represented some very egregious things, and they've done some vile shit, right? These are people who are, for all intents and purposes, criminals, but that's a different conversation for a different day. However, you have your Gen Zers who place a lot of emphasis on dismantling and taking down these symbolic structures. So, for instance, the Confederate flag, statues of Christopher Columbus and other Confederate soldiers and things of that nature. There could be a lot of value wrapped up in destroying symbols that, a lot of people don't necessarily agree with. which I mean is fine, but the only critique I would have is that, you know, in addition to doing that, you might want to be mindful of overlooking more concrete systematic structures that are way more oppressive to you than, let's say, a Confederate flag. But it's still, like I said before, there is something very admirable about that. Pluto Sagittarius generation is very, very sensitive to symbolism. Now, taking it back to even the era, the most recent era of this Pluto Sag generation, during this time period, you know, as I stated before, there was a lot of transformation in terms of religion, okay, and spirituality. And you even noticed an uptick or surge of extremism and radical behavior, even with politics. So this resulted in a clash of religious ideals, okay, and religion and things like that became increasingly important as they were often the cornerstone of political conflict. So take, for example, once again, 9/11, where you had this kind of, on a world stage, this introduction to this theory that a person could be so committed to their religion that they would be willing to kill and die for it, and take out other people along the way, you know, especially when a lot of Americans woke up to the whole concept of, oh my gosh, we got to fight the war on terrorism, right? So, you know, and then also this quest for domination and American imperialism increased significantly during this time period, which is another manifestation of Pluto and Sagittarius. Now, on 9/11, the exact day that it occurred, so September 11th, 2001, Pluto was at the 12th degree of Sagittarius. Now, the number 12 does deal with victimization and sacrifice as well as suffering. And then you had transiting Mars, which was at the 1st degree of Capricorn, conjunct Chiron at the 23rd degree of Sagittarius as well. So, I mean, this could even deal with possible government cooperation. But like I said, different story for a different day. Another good example of extremist behavior during this time period was, I don't know if you guys have heard of the Heaven's Gate cult. So back of January 10th, 1997, these cult members decided to commit mass suicide, okay, by, I think it was drinking some Kool-Aid, or, I mean, they poisoned themselves, and they all kind of lined up in a bed. They were found with certain sneakers on, and it's where the saying, don't drink the Kool-Aid, actually derives from. So, you know, that was very interesting. And during this time period, you know, when Pluto was a Sagittarius, false prophets and cults did gain a lot of power. Also, during this time period, sexually explicit material was on the increase as well. A lot of people were a lot more open about their sexual taboos, even in terms of, I mean, Sagittarius dealing with comedy. Comedy became a lot more provocative, okay? For example, South Park aired in 1997. You know, this very brash, blunt, lowbrow, sometimes even just gutter, dark sense of humor, right? Letting it all hang out, lacking tact, that type of thing. Pluto and Sagittarius also ushered in, as I stated before, the information age. So with the acceleration of technology and the internet, there was more information at people's fingertips, of course, and it's all about uncovering hidden truths. And as a result, accessing and staying connected with people from all over the world became more common. So it became a lot easier for you to keep in touch with people who did not live in the same state as you, or who didn't live around you. So that's including and incorporating that, you know, long distance kind of Sagittarius energy. Also, as a result, crime became more sophisticated. So there was also a spike in cyber crime, you know, people hacking into your software, gaining your data or taking your data, and things like that. The dark web became a thing. Also, during this time, student loan debt soared, resulting in the curtailing of freedoms. And even on a humanistic level, you notice that Sagittarius Pluto generation, these are your individuals. And I would say, in addition to the Pluto Scorpio generation to a degree, but a lot of them are saddled with lots of student loan debt. Now, in addition, the national debt actually experienced a drastic increase as well, because you have to think about during this time, we were at war. When Pluto is in Sagittarius, there is also this element of rebirth through long distance travel. However, travel expenses could be costly. And this could also even deal with political corruption. That could also be the cause for people to seek uh, asylum, to immigrate from one country to another. A lot of that definitely surged during this time period. And a great example is back on February 14th, 1996, after a violent clash between the Filipino soldiers and Vietnamese boat people. A lot of the Vietnamese individuals sought asylum. All right. However, they were returned and they were turned away. So there was a lot of difficulty in seeking refuge elsewhere, right? But that was definitely a very common thing during this time period. So that concludes my video on Pluto and Sagittarius. Y'all be sure to drop down in the comment sections if you have any thoughts, questions, comments, concerns to contribute. And make sure you practice unconditional self-love so that you can love others. And until the next video, I holla.